there's some audio. Yeah, the audio is okay. Evening all on PlayChess and also YouTube. I'm streaming too, and hopefully we'll start in just a few moments. Okay. Right. Okay. Yeah, I thought we could do the final instalment of a selection of interesting games from the amazing Tata Steel tournament. And this week I'm going to mix it up a little bit. 3 games from Tata Steel A and a few games from Tata Steel B, which I've neglected so far. From Tata Steel A, there was a dramatic game in round 9. Let's have a quick look. I think from Black's perspective, Naiditsch playing against Harikrishna. So Naiditsch, one of the top German players. Very exciting player, very dynamic, aggressive. But Harikrishna is one of the top players from India. And we see d4 from Naiditsch and knight f6. Now knight c3, I kind of like this move in principle, as it's you know, a kind of surprising move. People wouldn't really expect knight c3. It goes out of the beaten territory quite quickly compared to, say, c4, you know, knight f3. So knight c3, a little bit of a surprising move. After d5, we see bishop f4. Okay, so how does Black want to react here? Does Black want to be creative or solid? Not take too many risks? Well, I think already though that there's a slight potential concern here that the knight is blocking the c pawn, whilst the c pawn here, you know, c5 could be useful at the right moment later. Okay, we see bishop f5 and now f3. So this is one of the ideas that White can potentially play something like queen d2, castle queenside, and play for e4 later, or even maybe just target the bishop like this. And it all looks really, really interesting in principle to do this. Okay, but let's see what happens. e6 and now queen d2. So White's plan, you know, does look very, very aggressive and kind of original looking. So Black played now bishop e7. So for the moment, Black really isn't doing anything which seems unusual against White's system, and White castled queenside. So a show of like an aggressive setup here by White. And here I think is the first quite interesting move, because White would have more pressure than usual on d5, you know, for e4. So c5 might not be the best in this position, because there's always potentially d takes and e4. And it's interesting that Black didn't go for c5, but instead played knight c6. Now knight c6 does actually imply that knight b4 is a bit of a pain to White on c2. How does White actually defend c2? And already this seems like quite an awkward idea to handle. I'm not entirely sure even that a3, because there's a5 and knight b4 as a potential knight sack, which could be dangerous. White actually played queen e1, which seems fairly sensible, but maybe a bit passive if rook d2 is the idea. But really the other idea is e4. We see Black playing bishop g6. And then actually knight h3 is played. And I think from an engine point of view, Black is already equalized here. And I think there's very specific tactics going on which make the White position not as pleasant as it might seem. Black just castled knight f2. And here already we see Black now putting this bishop in an awkward spot with knight h5. Does the bishop really want to be lost with bishop g3 potentially? Or there might even be f5, just threatening to trap the bishop. You know, might even be better just to play f5 with the idea of f4. So the bishop actually dropped back to e3, which looks like a bit of congestion. You know, the e pawn is blocked by the bishop, the c pawn is blocked by the knight, and it's not really about black playing c5, but rather this torture on c2 here. We see knight b4, and white plays this move rook d2, and it's here now which the c pawn, black c pawn, can put pressure on white's center. We see c5. And it already looks just very unpleasant, potentially, this position. For example, I think taking white, knight takes, this kind of thing might not be that great because of d4. So white's in a bit of a tricky spot. I don't think the opening's been that great, but it looks as though surely, you know, g4, h4 would threaten to trap the bishop, you might think, because of h5. So we see this g4 move, the knight drops back, and now h4, so threatening, it seems, you know, to try and encourage black to give up 2 minor pieces on c2. But is this good enough? We see actually a really amazing move in reaction to this, very calm but really powerful move, to be honest. I think it is one of the finest moves available in the position. What would you actually consider playing as black here? I guess you could consider it quite an amazing move, actually. If I give you 20 seconds starting from now, what would you play as black? So I'll give you 20 seconds because of the streaming delay. So as black to play, what would you play here? Any ideas? Any thoughts? What would you play as black? If everyone's catched up to the position here. Okay, so there's been one suggestion for h5. It wasn't h5, although, you know, white does seem to be threatening h5. Black didn't play h5. I think it's something much stronger, I believe, than h5. Not e5, no. It took me by surprise going through this game that this move was played. Yeah, it's hard to guess really. It was actually knight d7, and you might think, what on earth is this? Why can't, you know, white now play h5? White didn't play h5. White actually played f4. I'll just quickly show you h5 for what I've checked in my little preparation for this game. Is that, for example, knight takes c2. I'm forking queen and bishop here. So takes. Now black has c takes, forking these guys. Bishop takes, and now the knight d7 supports e5. So white is in trouble here after d4. This is just going to be good for black. Black's going to get the piece back. Well, black's got a rook as well, so it will be the exchange up after this, getting a piece back. And look at this c file. And look at it, moves like this. It's just too dangerous. It's just terrible. Knight d7 is just such a simple move. No panic. Just preparing, you know, knight takes c2 and taking an e5. Quite a crushing positional move. And now white's position actually collapses here quite soon. White plays f4 to try and maybe put a break on this e5 idea. Try and bind this e5 square. And now black just puts, again, more pressure on d4. We're playing bishop f6. So these horrible threats of bishop c2 and then cd are just renewed. Terrible. And now white, this is not good news, that white plays queen d1. Not good news. I guess trying to hold up d4. Very awkward after knight b6, because now knight c4 looks like a crushing threat. And this actually, now, it just looks abysmal, this position. There's another word for it. Because I think h5, well, there's knight c4 looks quite tempting on the bishop, if nothing else. You know, this is not going to be that big deal. And on c2, this just looks horrible. So knight b6, it looks really diabolical now, the white position. White tried d takes c5. And then bishop takes c3, just shattering the pawns around the king. White really doesn't want to take it. It's a very bad position now. C takes, which allows a takes. Of course, the rook's automatically activated. This is the worst disaster game of the tournament, actually, because after b takes c3, just knight takes a2 check, king b2, and the last move of the game, queen d6, is going into a3. And white had to resign. It's a disaster game, but to be fair, I think white should be given credit for an original, you know, system setup. It just seemed to go terribly wrong, because black didn't care at all about this g4 and h4 idea. This knight c6 really introduced a lot of issues early on c2. So it's quite an interesting game for how to react to this particular system as white. And this is also, of course, threatening, you know, bishop h4 potentially. But black wasn't interested in taking that. Black was really interested in central control. Look at these bishops. Broadcast, by the way, usually starts at 8 o'clock UK time. So that's 9 o'clock server time, usually. So yeah, that was the first game. It's quite a destructive game. I think one of the shorter games of the tournament. So let's have a look at another game. I guess we're going to see some games where creativity is punished, I'm afraid. I guess that's the usual story that happens at a high level when someone tries to be creative. But here, so Richard Rapport? So 2691 against Nakamura, and he has been playing very original stuff in the openings, and this game was no different against Nakamura. So knight f3, and after c5 we get b3. Okay, so what does Nakamura do against b3? Well, his plan, it seems, to lock down this bishop on this diagonal. So he actually shows he wants to construct a centre like this. He plays d6, so he's going to have e5. Try and blunt this bishop. e3, e5, check, knight c6, knight c3, knight f6. Now d4, trying to sort of break black's bind. And black actually took some space here with e4. And after d5 we see a6, a very, very strange opening sequence. The bishop now drops back to f1. Okay, so the bishop dropping back to f1. And knight e7. There's pressure already on d5 here. Knight d2, white's counter-attacking on e4, so these two pawns are vulnerable. This is protected with bishop f5, bishop b2, and now b5, trying to knock out the defense of d5 a bit more with b4. So it looks as though black might be doing okay here. h3, h5, stopping any g4. a3 looks a bit passive. Now an awkward looking move actually is played here, but black cannot of course play this sort of thing because knight e4 looks good for that, justifying that whole diagonal. Nakamura plays knight c8. So I think this knight is like heading to attack d5 from here and support bishop e7 and castling potentially. We see now a4, b4, knight e2, and now knight takes d5 is possible. Knight g3, double attacking f5 and e4. And now a very interesting move, instead of moving the bishop back, a very interesting move indeed. So Nakamura is a pawn up at the moment, and he plays a surprising move, which might not be actually entirely in black's favour. Can you guess what Nakamura played here? If I give you 20 seconds in this position. So black to play, would you move the bishop back? Another case of a frightening bishop, well, threat. Like, what would you do here as black? I'm not entirely sure it's the best move from a technical point of view, but it caused white a fright, I think. Black to play. Any ideas with black? Yeah. Black to play. Not g6. No, we can't play g6. Come on, diagonal. We can't play g6. I'll show you. Okay, so it was actually knight takes e3, trying to set up a nasty pin here, and white perhaps should have gone in for this. Engines actually indicate that this position might not be that bad for white to actually take it. I guess you'd have to be confident in your calculations like this. Now d5 threatening bishop d6, but I think white has enough resources to hold on here for a little bit. The problem in this sort of position is that it does still get scary for losing another pawn, and there's persistent pressure with h4. Maybe the bishop drops back first, but white's also in a bit of a tangle. I think maybe it was queen g5 or bishop g6, I'm not sure, but apparently white was a little bit better anyway if he went in for this, but he didn't actually. What he tried to do was quite clever as well, to be fair. He tried to like make use of this e-file, giving up that pawn as a sort of pawn sack, and also the rook, by playing queen e2. So now Nakamura plays knight takes c2 after king d1. We get this retreat bishop g6. Because if king takes, there's I think, well, king takes is interesting actually, but I'm not entirely sure what the refutation of that was actually. It's not e3 because we've got a pin pawn. I don't think it's necessarily e3, but white actually played knight d takes e4, which looks quite lucrative for these double checks against the black king. Now Nakamura played queen e7, knowing that the knight actually is usefully defending d6 here. And here I think there was a slight mistake. If white takes on c2, there's always d5 to try and get the piece back. But from an engine point of view, I think this was deemed a big mistake, this queen f3 move. But it looks like quite an amazing attacking idea that white is creating this focal point on f6 here. He wants to make use of f6. Nakamura took on a1. Bishop c4, really attacking stuff. So the king's still in the centre. Knight b6 was played. And now knight f6, as though this is really dangerous for the black king. So it looks quite scary, but you know, white's given up that rook. So black can afford to like lose this rook. He just takes that, takes queen c7 here. The thing is, in this position actually, if rook e1, that doesn't really do much for white because that annoying knight on a1 supports bishop c2 check, and if king d2 we've got bishop h6 forcing rook e3, and then we can just take the rook. So bishop takes f6. It might already show that something's actually gone wrong here, that the e file is not that easy to use because of this lurking bishop c2 check. So we have now queen c7, which now it looks as though rook e1's useful. It's good that the knight is actually protecting the rook here from that queen, by the way. King d7, it looks scary, but is there a mate against the black king? I don't think there is. White for the moment takes on a1. And so with this rook attacked, it looks as though also this is quite dangerous, you know, for things like bishop takes f7 and stuff. But actually Nakamura doesn't mind giving up the rook. He plays actually queen c6. He's trying to get the queens off. So it looks like a really, you know, complicated position. And there's also the idea, you know, maybe knight takes and queen takes if white's not going to do anything about that. Now, so he's giving back a rook as well. So queen takes, king takes, bishop takes. So what's happened here materially is that actually black is a pawn up. Just one pawn up. Very complicated game. But h4, getting a bit of space there. Now if knight e4, I think we just have d5. So the knight goes back to f1. Now knight takes c4 creates this passed pawn. So maybe, you know, one pawn up, but his king's not mated. So that's good news. And, you know, he's got a very comfortable position after bishop d3. So white's attack has just disappeared. And this is a miserable position, really, because these pawns have a loss to expand. Oh. Just wait for that phone to pick up. Sorry about this. Okay, so bishop d3. You know, white's got a miserable position. Knight d2, d5. You know, these pawns are getting quite mobile soon. cd, king takes. I mean, the king can do this. It's aggressive in the endgame. Check. It steps back. Rook h5. Now bishop g6, and you know these pawns are ready to roll. And actually, white resigned here. I don't think he was very pleased with his position at all. He actually resigned. I think it is pretty bad because this has been, I think, to bishop e7, and is actually losing material here, it seems, because this bishop's at target. For example, rook takes h4, bishop e7. So we're attacking that bishop, and if rook h6, we've got bishop g5. So we're going to win material again. So white actually resigned here. If rook e5, we've just got bishop d6. So we're attacking again e5 and h8. I think that's the story there. But anyway, so white resigned. So it was enterprising play again, but you know, punished. I know this is really bad actually from a creative point of view. That this creativity is shown to be disastrous, but you know Nakamura is higher rated anyway than Richard reports, you know, by significantly. So you know, I thought it was an interesting game from white. So let's have a look at another game. Now Naiditsch against these are two very interesting players put together. So Naiditsch white against Richard Rapport, and we see actually, I'll take it from white's point of view, e4 when we get this d6, d4, g6, hits or modern. Knight c3, bishop g7. So Naiditsch plays now knight f3, c6. Bishop e3. So this looks like another aggressive system from Naiditsch. Is it going to be better than last time? Sort of trying to castle queenside and stuff, and you know, h4, h5 later. It looks pretty direct stuff. Queen c2, queen d2, knight d7, with no need at the moment. You know, the knight is supporting the h6 square, so it just leaves it there for a moment, and black just plays on the queen side with b5. But now I think this is a very good move here to stop actually the knight coming even to f6 if it wanted to later. White played actually e5. I think one of the points here about this e5 is that it's quite dangerous for black to win this pawn. For example, d takes, knight takes. I think there's actually something like bishop takes b5 when I was checking this earlier, and this is quite destructive. You know, c takes, knight takes, for example, like this. You know, this queen a5. We've got knight c7. We're threatening mate. That sort of thing is really quite destructive. It's too dangerous, this position, with that d file opened up for the price of the pawn, and this bishop takes b5 lurking around. So black actually sort of chickened out of this. Well, that's actually, black avoided this. Black played d5, trying to keep things closed and just carry on with the attack. But of course this is a very useful wedge against knight f6. h4, and actually h4 is trying to undermine this structure here and make it a bit tactically unsafe. Oh, sorry, did I say something silly there? There was queen d8 immediately. Alex Kidd, pardon me, sorry, I was just trying to remember some analysis there. Yeah, queen d8. Yeah, good spot. No, so that wasn't possible. Queen. Oh, sorry, I meant this position. Queen d7, queen a5. Yeah. The queen can't even come off d8 here. Pardon me. Yeah, good spot. Good spot. So anyway, so it just shows anyway. e5 is like really dangerous. So h4, queen a5. h5. And look, is black really counter-attacking with his king in the centre? We see knight b6. And now hg, which does put pressure down this h file. fg, it looks horrible to play fg. I guess hg isn't looking that great. So we'll see fg, a3, rook b8. And now move, just welcoming the exchange of queens here, positional sort of move, knight e4, where this c5 square is a bit vulnerable. So white doesn't mind like the exchange of queens, because I think the knight would just go back and then reroute maybe by b3 to c5, because that's quite a painful square for black. Black actually played b4, and we have this beautiful knight c5 now. Knight c4, and that's just taken off, and the counterplay doesn't seem that strong after this next move, a4, protected by that knight. So we have a situation where it doesn't look entirely convincing that these pieces are kind of stuck a little bit, all of these pieces. We see c3, and now queen d3 introduces a horrible threat into the position. I wonder if you can guess it, but before I ask you, c takes, king takes, b3, c3, keeping the lines closed. So the king's quite safe here. a6 is controlled with the queen and bishop. But can you see also what white is actually threatening in this position? What is white actually threatening, do you think, here? If I give you 20 seconds starting from now. So what do you think white's actually threatening? It's black's move, but what is white threatening? Or maybe I should just show you black's move and ask you what the move is. But either. I'll show you, yeah. Yeah. Okay, so queen... well, I'll show you black's move and you can still work out what white's threatening. White is actually threatening rook takes h7. It's quite a nasty tactic for that loose rook with queen g6. And even bishop f5 doesn't make it backfire. This tactic doesn't backfire after bishop f5 because now white just plays queen c4, targeting g8, you know, to win the rook back. So this is horrible. That white's just done some damage here. It's a very bad position now for black. King f8, and it gets worse. Now knight g5 is really getting the knives in, threatening knight e6 check either way to win the queen. So black is forced into trying to stop this sort of thing with queen d5. So white's just material up here, and he just takes the queens off. Knight c e6 check. Black has to take. Knight takes for black to try and maintain equality. King f7. Some sort of equality, but it's pretty bad. It's pawns down here. Another pawn drops. So how many pawns are we talking about here? 3, 4, 5, 6 against 1, 2, 3. We're 3 pawns up. It's end of game really. The damage has been done. Black played on for a bit. Rook a6, rook b7, rook a1, and this pawn's going to be rounded up as well soon. Rook h2. White can just play g3 here, as black's not really up to anything. e6. Rook a3, just rounding up the b3 pawn. Knight e7. That's just taken. So another pawn. Yep, it's bad. After king c2, black resigns. Okay, I just thought that was an interesting game because white was kind of calm with this, what seemed to be quite a violent attack on the queen side. The e5 I thought was quite neat. And also this idea of, you know, getting the knight in like this with a4, I thought that was quite neat as well. I don't know about you guys if you think this was quite neat. But I think a4 as well, because it looks as though, you know, black's attacking with the queen and rook here, and it looks quite convincing until you see a4. I think that really just put an end to the attack. Really, it's not very pleasant after this. And if black didn't play something like c3, then, you know, maybe b3 anyway, and then yeah, it just looks as though the attack's gone here. So I thought that was quite interesting. There's another one, a Sicilian defense. No. Let's have a look at very interesting. Budapest Gambit game caught my eye. So Jobova, who eventually won the tournament, he played this Budapest Gambit in round 5 against a really strong player, Wojciech from Poland, Radoslaw Wojciech, one of the top Polish grandmasters, 27-11, and Jobova's 27-10. So they're about the same rating. So d4, knight f6, and I think this would make an amazing surprise weapon on blitz. I think I've got a book on the Budapest. I might try and go through it. c4, the Budapest Gambit is this e5, and I don't know. It's an interesting reputation. I mean, it's not usually seen at this sort of level. e5. So white takes that, and we see knight g4. White protects that with bishop f4. Seems fair enough. Now this aggressive g5 move, which accelerates the fianchettoed bishop. Bishop g3, knight c6. Knight f3. So it's all about the e5 pawn at the moment. Bishop g7. So black's play looks kind of, you know, straightforward here so far. H4, and now black, you know, gets his pawn back for a moment. Knight takes, knight takes, knight c3, g4. I don't think black doesn't seem to be that bad. I mean, I've checked this game with an engine beforehand. Black didn't seem to have much of a disadvantage from the opening stage. Although white has a comfortable, you know, control of d5, I don't think that's necessarily a huge deal. Bishop e6. It's not really threatening the pawn with these queen a4 checks available. So just rook c1. Yeah, Ivanchuk's played this Budapest against Iranian, but he ran out of time, didn't he? Alex Kidd, he ran out of time. So I think the Budapest is an interesting surprise weapon, though. So white actually castled here. Sorry, black castled. And now the pawn is protected. c6. White plays now h5. Black doesn't seem to be bothered about h6. He just plays f5. h6 is allowed. Bishop f6. Queen d2. Queen e7. And this just doesn't look right, actually. This plan, that, I mean, intuitively to me, I mean, not right. It looks a bit risky. It looks a bit risky. That, you know, instead of this plan, white could have just castled there, it seems, earlier, but he's now playing f4, and this just looks a bit, in principle, as though this looks a bit weird, but, you know, someone 27-11 is playing it. You know, there's a reason. So g takes, you know, the g file is potentially quite dangerous for black. The king gets out of the way. f4, and I think there's a really sort of clever move in response to this. It's not like knight g4, which might be what white was intending, because maybe you know, maybe d6 is an issue, for example. Actually, I haven't really checked this out, but it looks as though d6 might be an issue as an example, but that might not be the case. There might be something even stronger. Okay, but black actually didn't play knight g4. Can you guess what black actually played in this position? If I give you 20 seconds starting from now. So black to play in this position. Any ideas? Oh, I thought it was surprising. I mean, you might think that, you know, the knight might just retreat. I mean, yeah, but the knight didn't actually. The knight kept being aggressive. Black actually played rook d8, rook a d8. And I think it's quite scary for white, this position. If attacking the queen moves, I think f4, and this gets really quite horrific, quite quickly, potentially. Although I'm probably not going to be able to remember the analysis. Takes. I think this is just getting a bit scary. I think this bishop is a problem with bishop h4 check here, and if we played something like here, then it just gets very scary, like f3 with the king in the center. You know, you got this sort of thing, this check, and we could just take here, and black ends up being a load better in this sort of position. So white didn't want to sort of do this. didn't want to go in for this. He played actually Queen C2. And now Knight G4 can be played, that aggressive Knight G4, without any sort of punishment on D6. Bishop takes G4. And even better than Fg, keeping this G file alive with Rook G8, because both these bishops are loose here. So black is playing very dynamically indeed. Very dynamically. We see Knight E2. Rook takes G4. King F2. Things have gone wrong here, because now D5 looks as though this is actually really quite strong. Black's pieces are all pretty liberated. This D4, I mean, there's pressure on G3 all the time as well to factor in. White tries Rook CD1, Rook E8, C5, perhaps trying to keep things bolted down. Bishop F7, so E3 needs to be protected. Queen C1, Queen E4. Now looks as though there's numerous threats here, including D4, and maybe things like Bishop D5. This diagonal is a bit scary. White tried Knight D4, and actually White resigned. Oh, losing my voice now. White resigned with this move, Knight D4. Can you spot why White would resign here after Knight D4? I think black has a really powerful move. So if I give you 20 seconds here, what would you play with black? Yeah, okay, so any ideas? So black's play here can crash through, expose white's king safety with, yeah, okay, Rook takes G3 was playing, because we always got this Rook G8. This is a real pain, this Rook G8. I think it goes something like this: check, and to carry on the attack, Bishop takes D4. Now if Rook takes, I think we've just got Queen takes H1, and if Pawn takes, I think we have now, well, just mating like this. Yeah. So it's all like crashing through. It's all crashing through here after Rook takes G3. So we got this. We just, this is a liability. F3 is a liability after. It's just pretty horrible stuff. This G2 square, Bishop D4. It's terrible, terrible. Actually, Rook takes D4. I think there's check actually here first, so we can pick up this Rook and the Queen. So that's pretty grim as well. We can pick up the Queen after. I think that shows that danger. Okay, so yeah, that was a Budapest Gambit. So this is really quite interesting. If anyone's ever played online Blitz and wants a surprise weapon, then it looks as though this is a really good candidate. This E5, this Budapest Gambit, it might be worth checking out as a surprise weapon. That's what I'm thinking anyway for Blitz chess. I don't know what you guys think. Is the Budapest worth researching? What do you think? An interesting gambit for the repertoire. Oh, sorry about that. Okay, so I think have we got one more game to show you? One or two? I got a Sicilian game, Sicilian defense game. Marian van Delft or something against Radoslow Wojciech. I'm butchering the names. Okay. Sorry about that. So E4 and Radoslow plays C5. And we have a Sicilian. I think, should we make this the last game? Sicilian or D4. Okay, we get an open Sicilian. Knight F6, Knight C3, A6, and White tries H3. So how does Black want to react to this? Let's let's flip the board from Black's point of view. So this is an interesting idea. Black actually reacts with E5, and now Bishop E6. Bishop E3, Knight D7, F4, and I think I've seen this before at Hastings recently, where this F5 looks quite dangerous. But Black played very energetically in this position with Rook C8, Queen F3, B5, and this F5 comes, and Black actually took off what looks to be the passive knight on B3. Interestingly here, I think White should consider sacrificing the C2 pawn, at least from an engine point of view. I think the engines were indicating A takes here to allow this pawn sack, because I don't think it's that bad, the pawn sack. We can take here and try and use the C file later. The way White played it instead was actually C takes B3, capturing away from the center. In principle, is meant to be not that hot, but Black's reaction is very energetic here. Black actually played. I wonder if you can guess what Black played in this position. 20 seconds here. What would you play with Black? Any ideas? Because if you don't do something quickly here, White's going to get a big grip on D5. You don't really want that here in this structure. Once the knight sits on D5, you're going to be strangled. Yeah. So Black actually had to react extremely quickly here and played the move D5. Very energetic move indeed. And it's not even apparent what's the point immediately. E takes D5, Bishop B4. Now, although Black is threatening Rook takes C3 here to win the Rook, I had to check this with an engine in this position because I wasn't sure really what the point was still if White played a simple move like Rook C1. In the game, White castled queenside, but a simple move like Rook C1, I'm going to test you. What does Black actually play in this position? Can you see what Black would play here? So we're pawn down here with Black in this variation. Rook C1 wasn't played, but what would you play in this position? A very simple move, actually. Very, very simple. But very, very dangerous for white. I think we don't need to be in a mad panic when we've sacrificed the pawn. And this variation just shows that, but I did check with engines, yeah. So, I mean, black just has simply knight b6, just to put more pressure on d5, and it wouldn't matter even about bishop takes b6. We'd be on that horrible diagonal. This would be absolutely brilliant for black. You know, what is white actually doing in this position? It's terrible. So white, I think that's why he just rejected this rook c1. He just castled queenside instead. And, you know, black just castled kingside. It doesn't matter being a pawn down here. He's got so much play. So, king b1, trying to give the pawn back. Black does take that. Takes. He's got his pawn back. And the dark squares are kind of weak here. I don't think this next move was the best. Queen e2 was played. Now knight e4 actually threatens rook takes b3 check with the idea of knight c3. So something has to be done about that. So queen e1 looks awkward. The rook goes back to c8 now, threatening knight c3 check now. These dark squares are not much fun here for white. Rook c1. Knight df6. So d5 is a bit loose now. Rook takes. Queen takes. Hitting f5. That's protected. But d5 is dropping. Knight takes d5. Pawn up. So a pawn sacrifice and now pawn up. Okay, white's got the bishop pair, but these knights and queen look horrible here. Bishop g2. Check with an e knight, king b2. And now a really naughty move. Oh, this is a really great move. I mean, you know, nice tactical move. Can you spot what black played in this position? So he's a pawn up. But this is a great move, I think. So black to play here. What would you play with black? 20 seconds starting from now. Okay, black, I'll give you a clue, brutally gets rid of white's bishop pair with a very powerful forcing move. Knight d1, check. He's just vacated that c3 square, this loose bishop, knight d1. So he's on e3. So it has to be taken, queen c3, king d1. Knight takes e3, attacking the queen, bishop. Queen goes to e2. Rook d8 now threatens rook d2 with mating on b2. Rook c1. We have queen d4 now. And horrible position actually. Black after a3, black just plays e4, and I think white got depressed by the state of things here, and actually resigned. Maybe, you know, he could have played on a bit, but this knight is quite a monstrous knight actually, and black is now threatening queen d3, and this pawn looks really incredibly dangerous here. White actually just resigned. It's a bit extreme, you might think, but it's actually quite a bad position for white, this position here. For example, if king a2, then check, and we're kind of winning the bishop. There's very limited moves here. Queen d3 as the threat. Yeah, I'm not sure it's worth playing on necessarily. And I've forgotten the exact move which would have given white would end up going 2 pawns down in what I saw. I think it might have been bishop f1. No, actually rook e1. I think rook e1 might actually be the best move. Knight takes here. Check. I mean, it's just pretty horrible stuff. But anyway, after e4 with queen d3, white resigned. Okay, so I thought there was some interesting games in this selection, and I think we're going to move on to another tournament next week. So yeah, I hope you'll have a great week with your chess, and you know, see you next Tuesday. Okay, so thanks for coming, and yeah, I hope you got something out of this. I'm going to put it on YouTube.com kingscrusher. So yeah, thanks for coming. Comments or questions on YouTube. Thanks very much.